Star Wars movie tier list. And this is all A1 takes. Nobody's ever had better takes.
Sheen, boom. Star Wars.
Starting out with episode 1, The Phantom Menace, brother. This was the beginning of the prequel trilogy. It was the rejuvenation of the franchise, rather rebirth of the franchise, especially coming off of the original 3-movie run. I think some people were really like weirded out by this movie. It had Jar Jar Binks, which was a big turnoff for a lot of the classic Star Wars fans, right? I think it's Jar Jar Binks kind of meets the judgment of a younger audience a little bit better nowadays. But for a lot of the old heads, they hated this movie partially just because Jar Jar Binks. I thought overall it had a really, really good mix of story, action, and just things going on. I thought it was cool in terms of how much it added lore-wise to like the midichlorians and everything like that. I guess like dissecting or probing fucking young Anakin, seeing if he was like, you know, force sensitive and whatnot. He's off the charts, whatever. And like, I mean, you had the pod racing scene that is like iconic in Star Wars. Darth Maul. Little did we know that that was gonna birth one of the fucking most prolific Star Wars villains of all time, especially through the cartoon series and everything like that. They carried his story pretty deeply. Overall, I think episode 1 is a B tier movie. I think it's really, really solid. Some people are probably gonna be like, what the fuck? But honestly, I think this movie did a really good job in just in terms of like keeping everything moving. I thought it was a major contributor to the series. That might honestly be seen as a pretty hot take. I feel like a lot of people are willing to go and throw episode 1 in that C range. The more I think about it, it really did have a lot to offer. It did a lot of cool stuff, especially in everybody coming back to the Star Wars universe. And yeah, I just think it was a good overall movie. There's a lot to it. Now, this is probably where I'm gonna lose a lot of people. And I'm just gonna rip the Band-Aid off. Attack of the Clones, D tier, bro. Attack of the Clones is a D tier movie. And allow me to fucking expand on this. Attack of the Clones.
Move this man!
Oh, dude. Oh, dude. Listen. Attack of the Clones had, to me, 25 minutes-ish, maybe 30 minutes of S-tier content. S-tier content. If you want to talk about the, you know, Geonosian arena, like a battle of Geonosis, you want to talk about the fight with Obi-Wan Kenobi and what was it? Jango Fett on Camino. Like awesome moments in the entire movie, right? But for a 2 to 2.5 hour movie, if you go back to this movie, and I guarantee you, don't do it. Don't do it. Because you will be just as disappointed as I was going back to this movie. It was quite literally 2 hours of just Anakin and Padme running around on Naboo talking about their feelings and shit. All right. They were out of the entire movie for practically the entire thing, right? And then like all of a sudden they get this call, you know, whatever, they go to Geonosis, they get captured, whatever, and then everybody else comes out, right? But I'll stand by this. They wasted so much time going on in Attack of the Clones with all the romance shit. It was so unnecessary, so boring. And then you get those two kinds of instances with Geonosis and Camino, and that was like the only good parts of the movie. The entire rest of the fucking movie, garbage. Really garbage. And I hate that because I love the Clone Wars era and it did so much to propel episode 3, but Attack of the Clones was not good for a majority of the movie. Moving on, we've got episode 3. Now, this is no question S tier, all right? I'm not even gonna play with your guys' feelings on this one. I could do that, but I'm putting it right in that S tier, man. Revenge of the Sith, starting off hot with the starfighter scene. They jump into General Grievous's ship, the Malevolence, while they're fighting over Coruscant, and then they go and they track down Palpatine. They manage to get him out. All the things start like working like politically in terms of Palpatine trying to like get power in the Senate, and obviously the fight on Mustafar. There's so much going on in this movie. It was so fucking good. There really doesn't need to be much more of an explanation for Revenge of the Sith being S tier. I think we can all get on the same page with that one. All right, here we go, man. Moving on. Rogue One. Rogue One came out of fucking nowhere. When they told us that they were making the new trilogy, like nobody was expecting these spin-off movies to be anything worthwhile. But Rogue One defied that fucking idea, all right? Rogue One is an S-tier movie. I mean, like, so much good stuff has came out of Rogue One. There was so much gray space in between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, lore-wise. Like, I mean, we got Andor out of that. I never expected Andor to be good either. When we got done with this movie, I really didn't care too much about Cassian Andor. And now he's like one of my favorite characters in the Star Wars universe. Diego Luna did great with him. Jyn Erso, her character was incredible, right? This movie was so solid, and there was so much going on, and there was so much for the backstory, filled in so many gaps. Now, on that same note, Solo sucked balls, brother. Solo was so bad. All right. To me, there was nothing redeeming about this movie in the slightest. All right. Solo, they're trying to like escape Han Solo and his girlfriend. And dude, like that scene was cool. The escape scene while they're trying to get off planet and stuff like that. But like everything else that came out of this fucking movie was so boring. If you just showed me that one scene with, what's her name? Game of Thrones girl, Emilia Clarke. Thank you. But essentially Han Solo's girlfriend in the very end with the call to Darth Maul. If you just showed me that one scene, that was all I needed. I did not need to see anything else that happened within this Solo movie. Honestly, was really disappointed. In classic Star Wars fashion, they took something that really sounded great on paper and screwed it all up. It took no chances. It did like nothing for me. Yeah, Solo goes F tier. All right, we got one spinoff in the S tier, one in the F tier. Next up, we have A New Hope. Now, frankly, I'm gonna put New Hope in A tier. All right, I thought that New Hope was a solid movie. Like it laid the foundation really well for the franchise, and there were some exciting parts, but it wasn't like I think I'm just honestly a little jaded to the feelings and like scenes in this movie because I've seen it so many times. But it is a really solid movie. It's set up for obviously this entire franchise that we fucking love. Good scenes too. All right, Empire Strikes Back. Now, I'm not gonna lie, a lot of people you'll talk to in the Star Wars community will tell you Empire Strikes Back is the best movie, hands down, right? And there was a point in time where I didn't necessarily agree with that, but I went back to it at one point, and I will say that my thoughts about it got better. If I'm being completely real, I wasn't the biggest fan of like all the time that Luke spent on Dagobah with Yoda. Shit was kind of boring to me. But the Hoth scene with the walkers and everything like that was cool. The Wampa, Cloud City, and Lando Calrissian and everything like that. Like there was good parts to this movie. Obviously one of the most famous scene in the entirety of Star Wars, you know, the I am your father scene coming out of this movie. Me personally, I think I'm willing in this very moment in time to put it in that S tier. I think it's definitely earned its place within that S tier. For me, just kind of barely, I would still take Revenge of the Sith and Rogue One over Empire Strikes Back personally. I know not many people would agree with that, but I do think it does find its way into that grouping. To end off the original trilogy, we got Return of the Jedi. This fucking movie, honest to God, I really enjoyed this movie when I was younger. Dude, I'm not gonna lie, I still think that it's like honestly up there. I kind of want to put this shit in the S tier. It had the Rancor, Jabba's palace, you know, everything like that. There was the honestly like probably one of the best intro scenes to a Star Wars movie in a while. When Luke is walking in, walks right up to Jabba, he like unhoods himself, right? And then they drop him in with the Rancor. Really fucking awesome movie. And then they go and fight over the Sarlacc pit. Obviously doing all that, making their way into Endor, going in and fighting, you know, Darth Vader and Sidious by the end of the movie. Obviously, a lot of you guys know the end of how this shit goes. Great fucking movie. I do think that it had its moments though. I'd be willing to put it strong A tier. Strong A tier. All right. I think it finds its way above A New Hope, but I think it's a strong A tier. I'm not exactly ready to put it in that S tier. We got The Force Awakens, our re-entry back into the Star Wars franchise after hiatus. Frankly, dude, I didn't think this movie was bad. Didn't think it was bad. And everybody makes the joke saying like, oh, this movie, it's not really a joke. This movie literally is kind of just like a parallel or like a remix of A New Hope. And it was not the most original in that regard. But I still think that it was okay. All right. It didn't necessarily disappoint me as a fan, but it didn't necessarily excite me a ton. What I will say is that this movie did get me excited for the other ones. They introduced Snoke. You know, you still didn't know a whole lot about Kylo Ren. I really thought that this movie was like, you know, at least a decent foundation. We all knew that they were going to kill off Han Solo, right? So I'm going to put this movie in with the C tier. I thought this shit was all right. It at least left me optimistic for the future movies. And honest to God, bro, honest to God, I wish it didn't even do that. The rest of the movies were trash. All right. It's not going to be, I'm just going to do it, man. I'm just going to do it. Both these movies were F tier. Both of these fucking movies were F tier. If there was any redeeming qualities over The Rise of Skywalker and The Last Jedi, it would be the fight scenes. There was literally nothing story-wise good came out of this shit at all. Hear me out, man. I think that if you kept J.J. Abrams, who directed The Force Awakens, and let him cook off of what he made for that story and not hand over the scripts to Rian Johnson for The Last Jedi, I think the trilogy would have been way, way better, dude. Because the whole thing that this trilogy was riding on is who is Snoke, what is he trying to do, what's going on here, and what's the ultimate goal. And then you go in there, you don't know anything about Snoke. Rey ends up finding Luke Skywalker, and like just really nothing comes of it, right? She has to fight this dark side in her and all this kind of stuff. And then she just goes in and like they kill Snoke, right? He's dead. And now you're just left with Kylo Ren, and it's like, we already know what Kylo's deal is. There's really nothing much more to this. You get into that final movie, and they're like, Palpatine somehow is back, alive. He's trying to take over the galaxy. He cloned himself, did all these things. Right? And that was the shittiest fucking writing of my entire life. When I saw that come across the screen, when I set foot in that movie theater, and I sat down and it just started right off the rip, I was about to puke, dude. I was about to puke. Story-wise, it was absolutely abysmal. All right. Good scenes, like in terms of like the fighting and stuff like that in certain regards. But story-wise, it just made no sense and absolutely killed all the fucking like dopamine that I had for Star Wars at the time. All right. It was so rough. So that's our Star Wars tier list right there, boys.